Yeah, I love this new microphone. I can hit mute real quickly. All right, it's live on YouTube. It's live on LinkedIn. We'll just give a few more minutes for people to get in. My background looks a little janky. All right, it works. Hello from Chicago. All right, Tom, good. It's coming up. All right, well, welcome to Materials Exchange, MX Lumber, MX Broadcasting. I don't know if you could see this, our 25th episode of MX Broadcasting with Lunch with Lumber People with Matt Lehman. You can go to mxlumber.com. We're the best digital B2B e-commerce exchange, changing the way lumber is bought and sold digitally in North America, soon to be the world forever. So Matt, we'll wait for a couple more people to come in. So please, during this show, I had my comments down yesterday. Please introduce to us who you are, where you're from in the comments, and ask any questions. And Matt and I will flex back and forth to them during the show. So we'll start again, coming off a great show yesterday with Matt and Greg. We were talking about Matt Beamer and Greg Riley about what's going on in lumber, and we're going to kind of go into this with Matt and talk about what we're seeing too. So, Matt, what did you see happen in lumber so far this week, and where are we?
I think you guys kind of nailed it yesterday. It's trying to bottom, but there's still if there's wood on the ground, it's negotiable. And the thing that's amazing to me is it's still negotiable for triple digits in a lot of places. I mean, just odd items. You can't go out and buy anything you want $100 under index, but you can buy any things that are on the ground at discount prices. But the spread between what's on the ground and what's been sold for 2 weeks is probably approaching $100. There's some items are like index plus 20 or $30, and I noticed yesterday Matt Beamer was talking about 2x8s with a dog out west, but they're getting popular down in the south. And I like you said, you never know when it's going to be a good year for 2x8s or a bad year for 2x8s, so you just kind of pot luck it. But it looks to me like the lumber side's bottoming. And I think it's a combination of three things. It's we talked about this a few weeks before it started, that the DIY market was supposedly dead. My thoughts were it wasn't dead; it was just delayed till after vacations, and those are coming to an end now. School's starting in another week, so the DIYers I think are coming back, and I noticed some DIY business this week for some fill-in kind of things. I don't expect we're going to see a lot of DIY from some of the major home centers as far as treated lumber goes, because they've got a good ample supply. They've also got it well priced because they bought it back in January and February this year. But I think they will get rid of that inventory. But what they don't have a lot of is the OSB or studs or just regular framing lumber. So yeah, I think we'll be back. And the independent guys that do treated are going to be coming back to get some more. So I think we've got a round of DIY and multifamilies coming on really strong. And I've got half a dozen multifamily people I'm in contact with regularly, and they're trying to buy 6 and 8 projects ahead. They want to put lumber in warehouses. They got warehouse facilities stored. So the home builders are just steady. We're doing $1.7 million and $1.6 million for starts. And I think if you put everything, the whole package together, DIY, multifamily, single family, and all that together, you're going to find the market is not oversupplied. It just appears to be oversupplied through the summer because we were missing the DIY market. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's great. So the DIY market, that's an interesting kettle of fish, right? So when they're buying on the way up and they're following that index, they can buy a lot of lumber and move up to their max on those contracts. Problem is when it rolls over and they pull back and they don't even take their minimum, all these mills that were set up to cut this premium grade lumber for these places, it just backs up. And when you back high grade up, the whole chain backs up, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like what the most difficult thing in this market to get right before we peaked was low grade lumber, because it just wasn't, the production of it's down to about 5% or less of production because of optimization. But number 2 fell so hard, it just smashed number 3 and 4 down with it. Even though there was none of it available to speak of, it just still crumbled it with it.
So we could talk to you a little bit about, let's go over to, we still have a lot of bad dry weather. I think Matt was talking yesterday, Beamer, up about how there are some situations up in the Pacific Northwest. Still have the forest fires up in Canada. and I guess we'll segue into this. So in Canada, and again, I'm going to speak very, very sophomorically about what I know about this. Hey, Brent Thorne from Missouri, good to have you on. So these logs up in BC get priced on a kind of a quarterly moving average based off of the price of the finished lumber. Does that sound right? Am I right there?
It's basically a 2x4 price. It's
okay. It's something like that.
It all goes back to the same contract rate as futures, but
so it screams up there. Log prices go up there with the price of lumber moving up. Well, you know, what goes up comes down. When the price of lumber goes down for a quarter, the log prices fall too. Now, when you look at a satellite picture, you can go into Google. Everybody should do this. You go into Google satellite and you go up over a great big BC mill and use the measuring tool on 3 or 4 of them, and they're about 200 US acres equivalent, 200 to 300 on the big ones. You go down to a southern pine mill, they're about 40 acres. And the reason for that is very simple. There's winter up in Canada, and it freezes and it thaws, and they have to go from a longer way to get logs sometimes. So they build a huge log deck generally right next to the mill. So when there's fire, and I don't know, but Matt, maybe in the South, they buy wood at the gate where truckers pull up and they're logging in forests really close to the mills. And they have some contracts with private people. They go out and cruise timber. They have timber cruisers that buy private, and they buy off of REIT land. But they have lumber showing up that literally goes into the Southern Pine facility and can come out of the lumber pretty quickly. They don't build a real log deck. But in Canada, you have a different issue, right? They have to have a bigger facility. They build a bigger log deck. So right now, I am assuming even with the fires and everything going on, they have log decks built right now.
Yeah, the only thing they don't have access to is when they cut the logs, and they basically have to log when the roads are frozen.
Yes.
So when they call when the breakup season starts, which is probably around February or March or so, as soon as it starts to get a little bit warm at all up there, then they have to stop logging because the road just turned into slush and mud, and they can't get out. But they leave a lot of that timber in the woods and go back and get it in the summer when it's dry enough to get back and do it. And that's the wood they don't have access to right now. And ultimately, the Canadian mills are going to need that. They're going to need those logs, but they don't need those logs right now.
Yeah.
And
so
they're also curtailing production because of the fires and the smoke and the transportation. That's an issue. Those log decks are not going to be getting smaller.
Yeah, so when they start, so we go through a whole quarter of down prices, those will start to adjust down those log costs, right? Yeah. So of course, the cost of production based on the highest priced log is we're probably up against it right now. But when you look at the logs that they have in their yard that they accumulated over a quarter, then maybe they obviously go back to last quarter, they've got some high priced logs sitting there. So this is just the way that market works up there, right?
Yeah, and they also have the ability to. A guy was telling me last week that it went around. He's in BC, and he's a buyer for a large group of dealers. And he said he just made a spin around the local mills that were in the Vancouver, BC area. Yeah, he said their log decks were as high as the log pickers could stack the logs. The only reason they didn't have mowers, they just couldn't put them any higher. But he said they had the highest log decks he's ever seen up there, and he's been in the business probably 20 years or so. But I mean, and that's an opinion, that's based on this versus that view versus another view of seeing it in a different time frame. But still, there doesn't appear to be a log shortage, and I think the market's getting it's at a spot where it's probably it needs to go up because it's just slower and inventories are low. But we don't need to fabricate things like mills running out of logs, and time.
If I went to a mill and looked at a log deck, it could probably be at a low, and I think it was high because it would be the most logs I've ever seen, right?
Sure, yeah, especially if you've been in the South.
Yeah, I'd have no idea. Well, that's interesting. I think it'll be good to kind of learn a little bit more about how that, because honestly, I've learned a little bit more. Some people have commented, sent me emails about how it actually works up there, but the theory is, as the price of lumber moves up, the log prices trail and move up with it. When it rolls over, it takes some time and they move down with it. Rudy, how are you from Minnesota? Good to see you. Tom Mabry from Florida. Great to see you too. So really, one thing we were talking on the show yesterday, where we came from, why we are where we're at, we're still in kind of an inventory liquidation. What I've heard is some of the big, think about it, some of these big consolidated retail yards that have got together. Can you imagine being hey, Jeff Dill, how are you, from Cape Cod, Massachusetts? Some of these large buyers have a big job cut out because they built a huge inventory and now it rolled over and they're trying to figure out. I mean, I've heard some of them calling their people in the field and saying, "Hey, I know we had a 120-day inventory. We want a 45-day inventory," and that's based on the output, right? That's a moving average too. So we're kind of are seeing the inventory liquidation on some items, but like you said, at a retail level, Kirk Miller, good point. The mills will have access to the salvage timber. That's true. That's a residual effect of these. Multifamily is one thing because they're in there buying. I've called some reloads and there's people stuffing reloads with some stuff, right? Because it's good value. They've got money and it makes sense. But some of the big retail yards are kind of starting to run stuff down because they want to get their costs down to sell their big home builders too and their big facilities.
Yeah, this, we talk about inventory liquidation. That's not abnormal right now. Usually the market liquidates between May and August anyway. That period of time is the builders are making a transition from starting to completing homes. So their starts are less, but we saw the last housing starts we're up at 1.7 million. So we're really trending higher for starts or demand for lumber during this liquidation time. And what we get is what you normally get in August is an underbought condition going into the fall, and I think we're right there right now. You can see on my FTP chart that week number 31 this week was supposed to be the week where we bottomed and turned it went the other way. So it looks like this is a week that it is turning. Prices are higher at midweek. They're probably going to be higher at the end of the week. I saw some people talking this morning about you're going to see some items of Southern Pine be down a couple $100, but this is I use 2x4s as kind of a barometer for everything. Just all my FTPs are just based on 2x4s, Southern Pine, East Side, Spruce West Side, and dry hem fir and green Doug fir, because those are the bellwether items that everybody looks at and uses. That's the market moves, and those are certainly picking up. And the thing that's the scariest to me about this is the volumes that the multifamily builders that are trying to get into the market to buy direct or buy some volume that haven't done it before. I think we're going to get a nice big August, September bounce, and we're going to get it way bought ahead.
Yeah, and we kind of seen that already, Matt, on some items like 2x4 9-footers, right? That stuff went significantly shot below the index price a week ago, and then last Friday print comes out and it's already above the price within 24 to 48 hours of that price coming out, right? Because 104s just got eaten up. So you had a good point before we talked. I talked about the basis on futures, and I almost am afraid to talk about it sometimes. I don't want to confuse people. So to make it real simple, last week there was the spot market, the cash price where you could buy physical cash at, and the price the CME was trading at. So not just 2x4, but even low priced relative to their historical basis items. And there was up to $200 of opportunity there where if you bought, you always think of it this way, you buy what's cheap and sell what's expensive. But there was so much fatigue for buyers and sellers of the CME that a lot of that opportunity, everybody just sat there. Well, within the last few days, you saw that spread kind of come in a little bit. That was if somebody wanted to basis trade something, right? And I started thinking about something why the materials exchange platform would be great on this. If a great big company that never traded lumber before, bought or sold lumber, wanted to buy a big position and put in warehouses, they could now buy it on materials exchange and use materials exchange to sell it. They wouldn't have to sleeve it through anybody. They could have access to the market themselves. Yeah. So there's a good opportunity where we can have for large houses, New York, Chicago, all those places to come in and now have an opportunity to really leverage a sales side without having to buy the sales side.
Yeah, here's something nobody talks about when you talk about the futures, the basis, and all that kind of thing. There's literally not enough volume of futures contracts traded if you were I mean, to even use the futures contract as a hedge, if you were a large home builder, if you were a multifamily builder, and you had to buy 25 cars of studs for 3 projects, you couldn't do it. I mean, for delayed delivery, for like November delivery, you couldn't even get them done on the board. There's just the volume isn't there. So I mean, you talk about the basis and the spread and the opportunity, but then you go and then you try to get it done, and you look at the difference between the bid and the ask is $15. You got to pay $10 or $15 just to get in a trade, and then you've got daily volatility that's 75 to 150 bucks a thousand, or 120 bucks a thousand. So I mean, you're up and down $5,000 or $6,000, $10,000 on one contract in a day. So imagine if you had 25 of those things on, just the roller coaster ride that you got to take just to watch your position sit there and bounce all over the place. It's just nerve wracking.
I think that was one reason we saw that spread go out so wide, because people were afraid of the volatility, the margins were high, and there was fatigue. Right. So
yeah, you look at like yesterday the market was a pretty big mover. It's up 50 bucks, been down 20, but it traded like 250 contracts for the whole front contract for September. I mean, that's minuscule. You guys, MX Exchange does more volume. I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume your volume is at least as big as what's done on the futures, on the CME for lumber futures on a daily basis.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I think people are also afraid of what news may come out there, right? Like, so somebody, and I'm not mentioning any names at all, somebody mentioned something yesterday about how they heard that one mill may take production off this week. Well, the mill that they mentioned is a publicly traded company. So how does that information leak out from somewhere to we all know the path that these conversations take. And then they go from one person to another, and then they move out. So I think that people are trying to figure out where the information is coming from. So let's just go through the other thing I was going to say is basis. So then let's just go over to the pure cash market. Matt Beamer had a good point yesterday. He goes, you could call a spruce mill, a hem fir mill, a Doug fir mill, an Eastern Canadian mill, a Southern pine mill. And there were variance in prices from $50 to $100 a thousand on the cash price with the same item of different mills, right? So we're in a really high area of price discovery right now.
Yeah, and you can't use the futures market for a price discovery, because that'll just drive you nuts. But you know, this is one of those times where I've always said you need to have a nice repertoire of suppliers. If you're a buyer, you need to have a good mix of brokers that you can trust and rely on. Mill contacts. If you're in the buying group, take advantage of that. Wholesale distributors need to be in contact with everybody, because the way this market's come apart, everybody's got a different cost basis. I mean, they're probably not anywhere close to each other for a cost basis of what they can sell at. And
yep, for sure. One shout out I want to make. A couple people are on here. So one of the items that we've had a lot of people putting on in the last few weeks, last week, is Brazilian pine plywood. We've got a bunch of Brazilian pine plywood on right now. So any MEMX users, come on and look at that. We've got some no grade stamp Brazilian pine plywood, all different thicknesses. Some great opportunities to really get in the supply chain and remove maybe one or two of the steps before that you had to buy that product. Let's jump over to some of your items. Let's look at the Southern Yellow Pine chart, Matt, because you were kind of saying treating may pick up a little bit. I'd like to see what that looks like. What's your thoughts on your Southern Pine chart?
I think that chart's going to be exactly what's going to happen. We're going to probably see pine bottom this week. And if you look at where that big hump is at like week number 20, I can't see the week number 38. Is that what that is? Or the red
39, the red line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just think about how you're going to position yourself between now and the next couple of months, you don't want to be running out of wood around week number 39 and buying the high of the market. So from a strategic point of view, if you either want to build your inventory to get it covered out through the end of October to take that whole big swoon out of play, or just if you're going to extend your inventory out to like 8 weeks, just keep on buying it as it goes up. When you get out to that week number 30, 47 line down there where the bottom is, you want to stop your buyings when you get to where you can have about 8 weeks worth of inventory and just ride that thing down. So, but just, you know, if everything comes to pass like I'm expecting it will, like with the DIY and the multifamily and single family together, I just had another thought that ran through my head, and that was that so many people are buying 2x6 tins right now and cutting them themselves.
Absolutely, instead of because of the spruce market.
and historically, Southern Yellow Pine is a horrible product to use for a stud. It's just hard to work with. It starts to twist and bow and warp when the weather starts to change. It's got big knot structures, just more difficult to nail through. But people are buying 2x610s like they're running it. It's not going to ever be anymore because there was a, probably $300 price spread between a 2x610 Southern Pine and a 2x6 pre-cut spruce. And one guy said, he said, I'll buy some 2x6 pre-cuts in pine, but just so you know, I'm paying my guys a nickel a piece to cut a 2x610 into a stud. So that's all I'm going to pay a reman to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's bring up your number three, our third chart, the spruce chart. Take a look at that. So there's the Canadian spruce chart. We kind of bottomed out a little bit in the last 2 weeks. I mean, look at the low trade price. I don't know where it was. I heard basically last week on a Wednesday or something that it was trading at $400 mil. Yep, and the next day it was trading at $550 mil, right? Because of the announcements, right? So we're kind of making that turn there, Matt. Here's something to keep in mind. If you look back and look how that thing's going down, we had a little 3 weeks ago. We had a little fake hitch where the news that was being reported was that the spruce mills had bottomed at whatever that number was, 550 or whatever it was, something like that, and they were going to bounce to $700. And then they came out the next day and we're down $100 under where they were before. So there's a lot of noise coming out of Canada, and the report that was supposed to be coming out today that was going to be earth shattering was, all it said was that, we said we were going to curtail at one of our mills, and we've done that, and we expect we might be doing it at some of our other mills. Yeah. So my history of watching these curtailments, they make an initial announcement and then announce the same thing 3 or 4 different ways over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, and that's you can see that's how the market's reacting to that a little bit cautiously. They're not really buying it all in because the stories are even more vague than normal. I heard, like Matt was saying yesterday, they had a mill completely burned to the ground, and I've heard nothing about that on the news cycle. I don't know if that was a reman mill or what it is. I'll have to check more on that. Here's an interesting one. Let's look at the panel chart, because that just Todd from Ohio, welcome in. So look at the number. The OSB chart is really interesting, right? Because it was stickier for a longer period of time. And like when I went to my local chain store last week, it was the first time I saw it go from $48.05 down to like $37 in one day, right? So it started rolling over, and the index rolled over pretty good. But the spot market, what we saw on the MX platform is, if you would have seen that like almost a month and a half ago, right? Because there was already a liquidation at the retail level trying to sell out of extra inventory they had a month and a half ago, right? Which is amazing to me that the index stayed up there for that long. But the other interesting thing, I don't follow plywood that much, but it seems like plywood led the charge down and went a big discount to OSB. Yeah, because I was thinking about that yesterday. That probably because the first thing that happened was people that were OSB users and switched to pine plywood went back to OSB. Yes. And so they dropped the plywood off on the deep end, and it just sank in a hurry. Those numbers are coming down $200 and $400 a week. It'll probably be down $300 or $400 this week on plywood. But I think OSB's the reason for that hang at the top is just, we talked about this before, it's just contracts. Yeah. You only have to sell 20% of your product every day. You can hang on to the top, and it just took that long, that sideways little minor slip thing there, where it looked like it was just kind of stable. That's just mills building inventory till they got full. And then 2 weeks ago, you can see it, the week number 28, where it just started to fall like hard. And I think we still haven't found the real price discovery yet for what OSB is really trading for, because nobody's really buying a lot of volume yet. But I wouldn't be surprised to see OSB come off another couple of $100 this week. I think it was off another couple of $100 in Western Canadian, but in the Southeast and all across the South, there's everybody that's buying lumber for, especially multifamily jobs. They want to buy OSB, and I think the OSB guys are holding out that if they're seeing that those lumber inquiries are going to probably turn into some OSB inquiries at some point. But right now,
OSB mills are just choking on it.
Yeah, and we're seeing pretty good liquidity. I mean, at least there's a bid ask, and we're seeing liquidity on the platform, which is good. But like you said, that price was showing on the MX platform going down a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the framing package. So one of the big questions I get all the time, where home builders are sending me emails all the time, is, hey, I keep hearing on your shows how lumber's falling, and I'm not seeing it at my level. I heard you said it dropped 70%, and we're getting maybe a 10 to 15% reduction on our framing package prices, right? On
the same scale, what's happening to his home prices?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you on that. It's one of those. It's like third rail.
At least lumber's working in the right direction, but they've got other things that lumber to worry about. But it's just a timing thing. It's just, it's like, gas in your car. You fill it up when you run out. You're not going to fill it up every mile going down the road and average your cost of your fuel down if you got lower prices. But the biggest problem for contractor yards and lumber yards was they were just almost panic stricken by having cars that were $1,600 cars that were 2 weeks from shipping, and the price of replacement was under $1,000 already. So and
you just do the math. The average, like Greg was telling me this the other day. He goes, imagine I have 3 or 4 cars at $1,600 and I buy one at $500. It doesn't average my cost down that much.
Exactly.
He goes,
they'd like to be able to have it all gone, but if somebody would come in and pay them $1,600 for all they've got, they'd be more than happy to reload.
And the other thing is, I told a guy the other day from a news source, he asked me why the price wasn't dropping. And I said, well, here's the real easy answer, Lance. I said, people don't drop their price because they don't have to, right? So the real thing is, if there's been so much consolidation in a lot of regions are still are kind of, when you go to a yard, you're buying everything from them, windows, doors, everything engineered, right? So you're buying more than just lumber. So you've got to kind of take that. But if you're smaller and looking for stuff, you had a good comment 2 weeks ago to a person that asked this question. Go outside your normal range and talk to a smaller independent yard that maybe average their lumber down faster.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm hearing even those people are really busy because people are doing that, right?
Yeah, they're churning it. Their liquidity is so much better. And you started off the conversation today with the acquisitions and conglomerations everything's kind of getting pulled together. And there's and I'm going to mention the company USLBM. They're on just a buying spree of buying independent dealers, but every time they buy somebody, that's just more work for the buyer that was buying for that small group of people, and that pile of lumber that's being bought by fewer people is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's gonna. I don't know how that's going to affect the market whether they're going to have more contracts or they're going to have to increase the buying staff. But you see 8 or 10 new places that got bought every week. That's 8 or 10 buyers that are out of the market.
Each one's different. Each different group that buys is different. Some have the theory of leave the buyer alone, let them do their own thing. And then you have these ones that come together and they have 7 middle managers that all did this job at 7 different locations, and whoever's the lead bull and fights over it gets the job, right?
Yeah.
And you hope to God he's the best one at doing it, or she's the best one at doing it, because when you win that sparring match, now you got to perform, right?
Well, and for us trying to figure out how to relate that to the current market, we're in a situation right now for the last month or so. We've been just flush with wood, and buying wood for anybody has not been a problem. So there hasn't had to be any panic buying or contract buying or that kind of thing. But if this market just starts to firm at all, which it already has started to firm some, those urgencies are going to be a lot more difficult for those buyers that have been congealed into one lump and have to do more buying at a time. But when the mills start to hear, I'm looking for 50 trucks or 20 cars, they don't even want to hear it. I mean, even in a falling market like this, nobody wants to sell out because you figure the market's going to turn and bounce at some point. But volume's got to be for you guys that are smaller guys. Don't feel like you're getting left out of the party, because actually your smaller volume probably is better for getting supply when things get tough, just because you don't have to say I'm looking for 25 and you can only buy 2. Just kind of be thankful that you're not in that arena.
That's a good point, Matt. Let's real quick, for anything unique in the framing package week over week.
Yeah, just look how it's falling. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Your builders, that's kind of the FPI, the framing package index, is a leading indicator of probably what you can expect over the next 30, 60 days for your lumber prices. Because you think about now, even if the wood that your suppliers are buying today is $500 or $600 lumber, and it's 2 weeks from shipment, 2 weeks from getting on the ground to be able to be distributed to you. So those are the kind of numbers you're looking at, probably like $18 a square foot for your framing package in August and September versus $31 back in April. So, for you guys that are, not seeing the sensitivity of the prices decline quickly, just, hold out hope and faith, not even hope, but the faith that it will come around. The prices are going to be lower, and you're, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we're already seeing from May to just on my framing package index, it's down by 50%. I mean, the cost to replace it is down by 50%. So you got to realize you never did see that. The builder didn't see that high price of $36 a square foot for framing, because there were average lower prices being built up along the way, and it's on the same way it's lagging down. But I definitely think you're at a place where you're going to see lower prices going forward for the next couple of months for builders.
Let's go over to what my favorite chart now. What I like is your trucking chart at the end. I think that's one that kind of is a good indicator for people of the economy, right, or certain aspects of it. So if I'm looking at this right, it looks like we continue to kind of trucking to maybe bounce a little bit. Is that blue chart right there?
Yeah.
But the overall trend is still off of its high. How would you sum up the trucking side of things right now?
That's the rail page right there. That's the those are cars.
Let's go up to the trucking one then. I may have highlighted the wrong one. There we go.
Yeah. See, you think about everything that gets hauled. I mean, we see lumber on a flatbed, but air conditioners get put on flatbeds. Heavy equipment gets put on flatbeds.
Watermelons, everything, boxes.
Yeah, there's anything that can get rained on or get covered with a tarp will go on a flatbed if it's any big ticket kind of items. But it's interesting to see that if you look at kind of at that red line, which was the 2020 last year,
yeah,
you can see that we started to level off right in here and then started to increase a bit into the fall.
Yes,
and we know that's going to happen. Trucking's going to get a little tighter because there's going to be, at least for not only just for lumber, but for everything that's in a cyclical business like lumber is and housing is, there's going to be an uptick of business in the fall. And so the getting the product to the market comes before that. So we got the next couple of months, probably people are going to be building inventories for their fall inventories. And so I expect we'll probably start to see that lumber and the load to truck ratio to kind of turn and bounce up a little bit over the next couple of months.
Well, good deal, Matt. I like that chart. Anything else? Anything else to finish up? Any thoughts?
I think more than anything else, don't get trapped into thinking really, really, really long term, because the market's shown that it not only has the ability but the willingness and desire to trade 1/3 of its price, of its higher price, and $500 lumber is not going away. $1,700 lumber may be gone for a while, but probably $1,000 lumber isn't gone and $500 lumber isn't gone. So I really pay attention to the cycles, the demand cycles and the preparation cycles. Like we're in right now, we're approaching a preparation cycle for the fall of building inventory and the pickup of the late summer DIY and just things that we expect that are just normal transition of builders going back into their start phase rather than their completion phase. It's the whole market's just taking a shift, but this is not January. This isn't March. This is just it's a fall bounce, and just it's going to probably be a good rally, but it's not going to be enough that you want to go worry about getting 6 months worth of inventory. Probably getting a couple of months worth of inventory is good enough. Well,
I appreciate it, Matt. Thanks. We're up against our half an hour, and thank you everybody for showing up. We will resume next week on some live shows, and if you have any questions in the meantime, Matt can be reached at Layman's Guide. Is it right? Layman's Guide.
Yeah, I got a new website, and I finally, for the first time in my career, have had laymansguide.com offered. So I bought the .com.
Oh, right on.
Emails changed to .com. I got a new laymansguide.com website. It's kind of cool just to plunder around that, just to look and see what I'd be interested in getting your feedback on it. And one of the things I had a guy ask this morning, said, what does it cost to buy your services? I said, well, you can't. You have to take it free for 2 months before you get a chance to buy it.
Oh, that's a great deal. So if you want to sign up at laymansguide.com, you'll hook them up for the first 2 months for free.
Yeah,
looking at your guide.
You absolutely can't buy it for under no circumstances until you've looked at it for 2 months, because I want you to make sure you want it and it's what you think it is. And also, I call it earn before you learn. I want you to be able to pay for your subscription or your membership before it's time. Before you make
that's really cool. That is cool, Matt. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Have a great finish to your week. Hope everything gets a profitable one. Everybody's healthy and safe, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.